It's Gorilla Time.
All right. All praise unto, Yahweh Hashem Yahushua, all praise to the Most High. My co-host, he's a little under the weather this evening. You know what I'm saying? So we go proceed without him. What's crazy is it's something he really been wanting to talk about for a long time. Maybe he'll feel better as the episode progresses. But yeah, some stuff I wanted to talk about. Some stuff I discovered. Not discovered this weekend, probably. Just a couple days ago. In regards to some history about my family that I was very, some of which I was unaware of, some I was aware of, but not exactly concrete on the details. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of crazy, but everything is very spiritual. You know what I'm saying? How the Most High works. And it's important always, just even studying about us being Israelites, studying about our biblical, history and heritage. We're studying about, who we are and where we come from. And this is a thing of importance, like it talks about in Job 8:8, right? Let me pull a matter of fact real quick. But yeah, so Job 8:8, right? It reads, "For inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare thyself to the search of thy fathers." So you need to ask questions about your history, your family, where you come from, right? Boom. Okay, so you have to, inquire your former age, studying the scriptures. I mean, that's essentially exactly what we're doing. We're on the streets, challenging our people and encouraging our people to do that, right? So that's not just all the way back in our origin. We got to do that with our own selves as much as we can, because much of our history has been hidden and has been lost, even in the last 50 years, the last 100 years, 150 years. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people don't really understand where they come from. I've always been, since a kid, passionate about learning and understanding and inquisitive, you know what I'm saying, about that type of stuff. Our, history in general, and me particularly, my personal family's history. So people can understand, of course, from the tribe of Levi, so-called Haitian. So when you understand how my particular direct lineage gets to the United States of America, is post-Haitian Revolution. So, y'all know the Haitian Revolution started in 1791, culminated in 1804 with the massacre at 1804, which was an ethnic cleansing of the French whites that were still in Haiti, right? After that happens, we plant the flag, Haiti. We now declare ourselves the Republic of Haiti. We have the emperor, and then, there's, civil issues that begin to happen. The emperor is double-crossed, and then Haiti splits up into two countries, the North and the South, right? During these times, and even during the times of the revolution, there was a lot of a mass exodus of Haiti. That's what a lot of people don't understand about the history. So even when we say the Haitians are the tribe of Levi, it's not limited to the Haitians, of course, because like it says in Genesis 49, in regards to Levi shall be scattered in Jacob. So we're actually all over the place. These things happen during the time of the revolution. A lot of French slave masters, as a fear of losing their slaves, took their slaves and went to other neighboring Caribbean islands, right? i.e. St. Lucia, Guadeloupe, Martinique. They went to French Guyana. They went to Suriname. They went to Trinidad, Cuba. These were main hubs where Haitian slaves were taken by their French slave masters, or later Haitians just moved to after the revolution and after we have independence and autonomy. But there was another place where we went to in droves, and that's a place called Louisiana, right? And what a lot of people don't know about, what's interesting is, one of the nicknames for Louisiana is what? The boot, right? Because it's shaped like a boot. But if you take a look at Haiti, it's also shaped like a boot, facing the other way, right? So I had this concept that I wanted to do when Chief Ephraim and I had planned a trip to New Orleans. last year was to do a documentary called The Tale of Two Boots, which can still be done. But going deep off into the history of the connection between Louisiana and Haiti, because they're very much connected, right? So, outside of just Frenchmen taking their slaves and coming to Louisiana. So anyway, outside of that, after the revolution now, Haiti were an official country. We have autonomy, we have independence. So at that point, we can do what we want to do. So now we come to America. And when we come to America as black people, we're coming as a term that was known in Louisiana as something called free people of color, is what it translates to, right? So you have black people, you know, that are free, and you have black people that are slaves. And us that's coming out of Haiti, we are free, right? We cannot be taken, we cannot be put in slavery. We just whooped the most powerful army on the earth's ass, which is Napoleon, who had the most influence over, of course, Louisiana, and was the catalyst of Louisiana Purchase, etc. So we come in there and we pose a serious threat to what's going on in Louisiana as far as the white power structure. Also, what people don't understand about Louisiana is how it was the white people that, number one, okay, Louisiana, right? What does Louisiana even mean, right? Louisiana is named after King Louis, right? It was King of France. So in original Louisiana is actually Mississippi. Mississippi, from Mississippi to Louisiana was actually the original Louisiana. So what people got to understand when you do with this history now is Mississippi is included in all this rich French history that goes on in that area. So what happens is we start coming from Haiti into Louisiana. And the point I was just going to make, actually, before I got lost, was the Acadians, right? The Acadians are French Canadians. And they left from places like Nova Scotia and things like that and came down to Louisiana and really founded and enriched that, right? So here we come. And now we pose a serious problem, right? Because now here we are free. We just beat y'all ass. And y'all still got slavery going on here, right? So we pose a symbol of hope for liberty for the people who are still slaves in Louisiana. They didn't like this. So it's crazy because when we shot Killmonger, right? Was a picture of me and Cap that I posted on my Instagram. And there's this very specific caption I put on it, right? And I put, officials said, Haitians come to America propagating dangerous doctrines amongst our Negroes, right? Reason I put that, of course, me being from Tribe Levi, taking a picture with Cap, who's from the tribe of Judah. We're in Little Haiti, Haitian flag mural behind us. So, and there was a time where we was at me and Captain were teaching at a rally when, what's my man who got killed in El Cajon? Alfred Alongo. When Alfred Alongo got killed by El Cajon sheriffs in El Cajon, California, and we were there, it was a brother I kind of like was at odds with while I was teaching. And basically he said, asked something where my people come from. I said Haiti. And then he said, well, what are you doing? Like basically like, well, what are you doing for us here? And I said, I'm here to propagate a dangerous doctrine to the Negroes. And the reason why I said that was because I know about that quote. And that's always been an instrumental quote, because basically when us as the tribe of Levi, so-called Haitians, came to America, one of the things we were trying to teach and show our brothers that were here, that were still subjugated to hardcore bondage, was we actually can get out of this. We're living proof. We've shown how to do this. We beat God again. We beat Napoleon. You know what I'm saying? Go open the history book and understand how important of a figure Napoleon was and how much damage we did to him, that led to so much. Again, the Louisiana Purchase is not possible if it's not for the Haitian Revolution, right? That means everything west of the Mississippi in this country is not the United States of America. This is France. This is New France, right? If we don't do what we did. You see what I'm saying? You know, the whole world wouldn't speak English. English wouldn't be the standard like it is now had we not did what we did. So, you know, all through the Spirit of the Most High, it was a part of prophecy going back to Deuteronomy 33, 8 to 11, right? So, that quote, they were greatly afraid. When the first wave of Haitians that came to New Orleans from Haiti, literally doubled the population of New Orleans. So that's how much we came there, right? As many people as already lived in New Orleans, that many people came from Haiti to New Orleans. So we started to entrench ourselves and, you know, really dig in to especially Louisiana, because it's what they would call a part of the Francophone world. Francophone means French-speaking world. So this is a place that we could identify with, we could deal with, because we come from this same culture, right? It had been put upon us, but we've been accustomed to this culture. So what happens is the white folks get scared. And they say, listen, all these Haitians, them niggas are going to have to live in the bayous. We can't even let them up in this city because it's going to be too bad. So they subjugate certain of us to the bayous. One particular Haitian military regiment that was subjugated, or not subjugated rather, but marginalized to the bayous, was actually the same regiment that went to Mexico and helped Mexico defeat the French in order for Cinco de Mayo to become a thing, right? So this was all happening out of Louisiana. As soon as we got independence in Haiti, we immediately branched out into Louisiana, right? I say all this to say this is how my family got to America. So the first person in my family that's actually born in America is my great-great-grandfather's Francois Grla, right? That's born in 1832, right? Born in 1832 in Lafayette. So he was born 1832 in Lafayette, and that starts my direct lineage from him, right? So what's interesting is the other day I hop up, it's Saturday, it's probably maybe 5, 6 in the morning. Just can't sleep, which anybody who knows me knows that's pretty, it's just a normal a normal night for me. But I just, in the spirit, I just start looking at stuff, right? I come across a newspaper article with Francois' name in it, right? So this newspaper article, it says Francois Marie Grla and his son Adolphe were arrested last Sunday on the charges of assault and battery and stabbing. The parish judge will inquire into the matter today. The complainant, Isham Davis, we learned, was only slightly wounded on the shoulder. So they stabbed some dude named Isham Davis, right? My great however many great-grandfathers and my great how many great-uncle stabbed this dude named Isham Davis in the streets of Lafayette, right? So my next logical question is simple. Who in the hell is Isham Davis that grandpa would want to poke this nigga, right? So I now got to find out who Isham Davis is. So I begin to research Isham Davis. I find a picture of his grave, and the grave reads Isham Fielding Davis, Colonel Duke, right? He's a Duke now, interestingly enough, of the Confederate States Army. So here we have a colonel in the Confederate States Army. So now I begin to understand why my great-great-grandfather had motivations to poke this thing in the street. This is a Confederate, obviously an avid racist, but again, he's in what you have to understand how white people felt about us who's coming from Haiti as free people of color. 1830, when does this happen? This incident, I believe it happened in the 1850s. This incident probably happened, hold on. Can I get a date on this? Yep. This is 1873. August 23rd, 1873, the Lafayette Advertiser posted this, right? So it's 1873. We're only a decade out of slavery. Him as somebody who fought for the institution of slavery and fighting in the Civil War, we know that he probably really dislikes a Negro that is free. But then on top of that, he's one that isn't even a part of the Civil War, not a part of what happened here in America. He's a part of actually, or comes from, is a product of actually fighting for and gaining that independence. So, it's not hard to kind of fill in the blanks on whatever led to that altercation, but great-grandpa wasn't playing that stuff. He poked it, plain and simple, right? So, it was crazy to see that, but also just understanding everything, understanding me and who I am and how I feel and my views and, my dedication, to what I'm dedicated to, and just to understand how long of a line I really come from up out of this. makes all the sense in the world. So in that first article I read was my great-great-grandfather and great-uncle, right? Adolphe. So what ends up happening is Adolphe actually ends up killing somebody and going to jail for life. Now that wasn't a so-called white man, and what was interesting though is what it says about my great-uncle. It says, this is his obituary after he died. He said he was a powerful, aggressive, abusive Negro of notorious, violent, and dangerous disposition. And what's crazy is, if you read, like, let me look at this, right? I should have had this ready. So it just totally demonizes, of course, him, a notorious, violent, dangerous, aggressive Negro, right? But what's crazy, when the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, had wrote their article about me, they said similar things in regards to me. Get to the point. Listen, the footage captures the SICARRI encouraging violence against an apparently white passerby, Grla, right? Me, speaking into his microphone, yells, "Get him up the street, get him up the street." Someone seemingly unaffiliated with the SICARRI rushed and punched the victim, knocking him down. Grla yells, "The war is on." There you go. That's what happens. As the second assailant approaches the victim, who is now lying on the ground. So this whole, oh look, the hate group's violent nature, right? This type of stuff is the stuff that they've been saying, about us in general, but just look a few generations back in my lineage, in newspaper publications are demonizing them the same way. It's like this stuff is of no wonder now. I see that this is all very divisive how the Most High has done this, right? So right, so then comes to my grandfather, my dad's pops. So there's been a story in the family in regards to how he ended up joining the army, and how the story was, that all the details were never laid out to me, but how the story was always told to me was, he was at a swimming pool. My grandpa was at a swimming pool, and if you know about racial issues in this country, in the South, in Jim Crow days, a lot of stuff happened in swimming pools. Swimming pools were a real epicenter for issues. Of course, it's hot. This is before the standardization of air conditioning. People naturally want to go to where they can cool off. A swimming pool, but there ain't but so many. And of course, there's segregation going on, things of that nature, right? So I was always told it happened in a swimming pool. He killed a white boy at the swimming pool for stealing his clothes. That's loosely how it was always iterated to me from my pops and from my grandma. But I found the actual, through the Spirit of the Most High, I found the actual newspaper article on the incident, right? So the first one says, Preston Grla, that's my grandpa. Preston Grla, wounding short of maiming, pled not guilty, trial set for October 10th, bond fixed at $150, right? So now I see he didn't kill nobody, he wounded somebody short of maiming, so I got to keep looking. So as I keep looking, I find the actual article. Now watch this. I want to see if y'all if you can see this. Right? Look at that. Look at that headline. Negro is held here on knife attack charge. Right? Interesting, right? And it says Preston Grla, Negro, about 19, is being held in jail here, charged with cutting with intent to kill. It was stated today by officers who said the prisoner had confessed to a knife attack on Harry Begnard, white youth, last Saturday night. So that's another Harry Begnard. That's another French name, right? Young Begnard and another youth are stated to have been walking along Jefferson Boulevard when Grla, in passing, bumped into them. So of course, Grandpa, he's taking it. These two white boys are walking. He just bumps into him, which could have happened. I don't know. Or maybe they could have bumped into him, right? When Grla passing bumped into them, Big Nog struck at the Negro, so the white boy swing, and the latter pulled out a knife and attacked the white boy. This is in the newspaper. Attacked the white boy, the police said, right? So, of course, white boy swings, Grandpa goes for that blade. Yeah, it's on. The case of Grla is scheduled for attention at the next term of district court. His bond has been set at $700. He had not been able to arrange bail. Today, of course, now $700 in when was this? This had to be. This was 1934. This was Wednesday, May 16th, 1934. $700 in 1934 is probably, $50,000. Who knows? Like, who knows? It's probably something insane. You know what I'm saying today? But it's just crazy to see that. Just researching my family, I just keep finding out they keep having conflicts. They keep having conflicts with one type of people constantly. We're just keep running into these people, and we're not playing with these people. And then they're not understanding that, of course, what is in us subconsciously is what we just came from, which is a revolution where literally, we're using machetes, blades, things like that to get our freedom against these same individuals. So I think it's only natural that as I go through what I go through and come up and make a decision as to what my life's getting ready to be about, I choose also to be in the fight, understanding that the sword is spiritual. In these times, when they're doing these clashes, you can still go head up and shoot it out or stab it out with these people. We live in a time now where the white man's got, first he dropped the atom bomb, now he got the nuke. You see what I'm saying? Now you can't even, to think about a physical, large scale clash at that level. That's not, realistic. But now we understand that we are armed, with the information through the Spirit of the Most High. And the ill thing is, okay, that's my father's father. So that's where my pops comes from. So now when I'm born and, he's going through a process of trying to mold me and implant me with certain things, the ideals that he implants me with are, ideals of liberation, an anti-white sentiment. I was very, very young the first time I ever heard the white man was the devil. And I didn't hear that on a TV or, a speech or a tape. This was something that, my pop sat me down and told me, you know what I'm saying, verbatim. So, in understanding that, and, but it's no wonder why he had those ideas. And even though he's doing the contradictory thing of, dealing with the white woman, pretty much exclusively, at least, once he got into his, mid to late 20s and throughout the rest of his adulthood, but he still went out of his way to implant certain ideas in us and certain, concepts in us that were, resistant, that were revolutionary, you know what I'm saying, that taught us to take pride in who we are broadly as black people, and in particularly from our, particular culture, which of course, comes from the origins of Haiti. So, he always implanted that in us, but also something he also implanted in me was not just black on the surface, but also when he included marginally or, broadly black people as being blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. You know what I'm saying? He's always implanted that because him and, as, his line of work, being a DJ, he really traveled all over the world. He saw all type of people from all over the place. So what he would tell me when he would go to Latin America, places he would frequent, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, those are like the main spots he would go to. He would go to Panama as well. And basically what he said was when he goes to these countries, he says he sees people that look two types of ways. They either look like me or they look like him. So in his mind, even though he's not knowing the truth and you know, the 12 tribes breakdown. He doesn't know any of that, but just intuitively in his spirit, he's recognizing and bearing witness and relaying this stuff to me, going, if I go to a country and everybody in this country either look like me or they look like you, but I made you, that tells me that we all the same in this country. You see what I'm saying? That was just a very simple conclusion that he comes to. And it's rational, it's logical, but also beyond that, it's spiritual. Because the spiritual connection is there. He interacts with these people, etc., and feels that kindredness when he's amongst them. So, you know, when that all happens, you know, he's coming back and he's, you know, imparting all that into me. So now when I see my first Hebrew Israelite video, and the first Hebrew Israelite video I see is a so-called Haitian brother Levi, we're talking, you know, trying to teach a so-called Colombian or Asherite brother, and he's telling him, you're one of our people, and then they, you know, give attention to the 12 tribes chart. Boom, it's automatically clicking to me. Number one, you know, just the things that have been imparted to me and been told to me were more important was, of course, God, right? Even though we were going to church and the Catholic Church, and what was interesting in dealing with my family, there's like one or two prestigious, you know, Catholic cathedrals or churches in Lafayette Parish, and either one of those, almost all of my family was buried, right? So we were deeply religious, but of course that's because, like it says in Romans, for they have a zeal of God, but not according to knowledge. That's our people. We don't know any better, but we just are trying to serve the Most High, or, you know, whatever concept that we have. So the Most High was imparted into me. Being proud about, you know, being black was imparted into me. Being anti-white was imparted into me, and also understanding the kindredness between the Negro that's here in North Central and South America and the indigenous people that are here in North Central and South America. So when I'm watching this video, all of that has now been packaged into one thing. You feel me? And it's the truth. So automatically when I see it, boom, it's easy to identify that, you know, and for it to resonate with me, and for my spirit to bear witness with it, because it's like, damn, this is kind of like what this all has been leading up to. You see what I'm saying? From the revolution to, you know, what my grandfather went into, to the information that my pops had, to just because of course he's born in 1964, so he's coming up during the times, you know, in the civil rights time, at the end of the civil rights time, and then during the 70s, where you had what you had. So you had a concept of a major black pride. That's, you know, the 70s, that's when everybody's rocking the afros. They're rocking the African medallions. You know what I'm saying? Things like that. Also, the blaxploitation movies are there. So the blaxploitation movies, what they're displaying is anti-establishment, resistance towards white power and white supremacy and things of that nature. And even though a lot of blaxploitation movies depicted a lot of negativity amongst our people and glorified and glamorized a lot of negative aspects amongst our people, some of it did, you know, the opposite, glamorize a lot of you know, positive things. You know what I'm saying? So that blaxploitation thing was like a gift and a curse. And that's something also that my pastor had me watch, all of these, you know, Dolomites and stuff like that. A main one that he used to have me watch was Truck Turner. So Truck Turner was Isaac Hayes. So the cold part about it was, and I told the story on my Instagram about Belly, and how Belly was one of my favorite movies. And, you know, I always wanted to be like Tommy on Belly, and how it was cold because he, you know, turned his life to God in the movie after he did all that he did. But the cold thing is, like Truck Turner, that was another, you know, the way how Truck Turner was every time. One of the early scenes in the movie is, you know, they're trying to do a hit on him, and he's walking up the street, and what happens? Dude is trying to do a hit, tells the other dude, like, oh man, you ain't telling me it was this dude. And he's like, man, that's Truck Turner. That's that killer nigga. That's what he said. That's that killer nigga. And that always stuck with me. So, like, going into the negative that they glamorize in those movies, And when you really get into it, you had Mario Van Peebles behind a lot of those movies, but you also had a lot of Jewish people behind a lot of those movies as well. And that it was done really divisively, the same thing that they end up doing with gangster rap a decade later or a decade and a half later. But it's that whole concept as a kid when I'm hearing these niggas are running from and they don't want nothing to do with this dude because he's regarded as, he has a reputation as being a killer nigga. Of course, what does that tell a kid who's watching that, or a young impressionable person that's watching that? If I want to be able to walk down the street and nobody mess with me, they have to understand that same thing about me. So I have to demonstrate a level of violence that's gonna, you know, make people feel that way. So it was crazy, but just that's what I just been reflecting on ever since I just through the spirit ran across this article. I just been reflecting on you know, me, my family history, but also just myself and my upbringing. So then the crazy thing was when I find these newspaper articles, boom, I screenshot them and I sent them to my sister and I sent them to my dad. So my dad was like, damn, like where in the hell did you find these? Like I always heard it was something, but I never knew all the real details, etc. So I was just kind of telling him about that. But then my sister had prompted her to call me. So when she called me, man, we probably sat up on the phone probably like 2.5 hours, just, you know, chopping it up. She's in grad school right now. She lives in Oakland, and just in all of that, what her whole thing is, and what she actually does is she works, because her main thing that she noticed, what she learned about in, you know, being woke, as they call it now, is about the school to prison pipeline, right? The school to prison pipeline. So she said when she learned about the school to prison pipeline, that all she could think about is her older brothers when she's learning about this stuff. So so now her work, what she's doing professionally, what she has a degree, is dealing with, you know, we're talking about the youngest kids, because the school to prison pipeline starts in preschool, right? It starts in Head Start. You feel what I'm saying? So she's working with the younger kids to try to combat that as much as possible, and that's what, you know, her passion is, and she feels like her calling is, and that's what she's doing. But she's just talking about how she just felt it up in her. And then what the cold part was, she went on a trip to Louisiana last year, right? And in that trip, that's where she just felt, she just said basically she just felt overwhelmed. She just said she was standing at the Mississippi River and she just felt overwhelmed with this feeling of, you know, this is what she needs to do, and, you know, she needs to take it seriously, etc. And I told her, I said, that Mississippi River, man, a lot has happened on that goddamn Mississippi River. Number one, it's the most important body of source of water in the United States of America. Number one, it's a ruler for, you know, there's west of it and there's east of it, and that's how America is looked at. One, but then two, if you think about the slaughter of the Gadites that happened there, the Native Americans, right? Because Mississippi, that's their word. You know what I'm saying? How many of them had to die? And then how many Negroes had to get brought over and then also die in that same river, and slaves that were taken up in that river, etc. So that was kind of heavy, but she just said basically she just felt overwhelmed, you know, and she just felt like, you know, that was her calling. But then, you know, just talking about, boom, this is where we come from, and things of that, it just kind of put into perspective to her and made sense that, okay, this is why I have just a feeling like we got to go against these motherfuckers because they fucked us up so much. We got to go against them, and to her, that's how she wants to combat them, is they want little black and brown babies in prison, and we got to arm them as much as possible and steer them away from the path that will lead them to prison as much as possible. And that starts at the earliest levels of education. That's where those seeds are planted, because I can honestly say that at my earliest levels of education, the way I was thinking and the type of stuff I was doing was certainly going to lead me to prison. It's a grace of the Most High that I've never been to prison. We've done a little county stint, but no prison. And you know, it's cold just thinking if I'm going to, like, just you know, they treat kids like criminals at school. You see what I'm saying? I remember my mom made a joke one time about, because there was my first elementary school I went to, I was there like kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. And, when I was switching to a different school, we had moved and I switched to a different school. And my mom said it was like at that school, like when you came in the hallways, it's like there was yelling dead man walking. That's how much trouble, that's how criminal, they treated me so criminally at the school. And, I was cutting up and acting bad and, getting in fights and, things of that nature. But at the same time, we're fucking kids. You know what I'm saying? Like, okay, two kids had a little fight. What's the problem? You know what I'm saying? Is that such a huge issue? You know what I'm saying? So I wasn't the aggressor every single time, but it's just going to show that they really do. The school to prison pipeline is really, really serious, and they really do it at the earliest ages. With there's rarely any acts of attempted to rehabilitate and reform. They tried to at school put me in some counseling dealing with anger management and things of that nature. And, I'm not going to say it wasn't effective, but that really should be the first option, is counseling, talking to these kids, seeing what's going on. Because a lot of us are just mad. We're going to school and we're mad. And we're mad over a combination of things. We could be mad because everything's not the best at home, right? And everything the best at home does not necessarily mean there's abuse. You're getting abused at home, right? For some people, that's the case, but that's not always the case. The home might not be the best. Mom and dad might, not be seeing eye to eye, and they might fight. And it might not be abuse. Dad might not be beating mom, but that dysfunction is still not healthy for them kids. And that can make the kids mad, and they're angry, and they want to take that out on somebody. Then, of course, there's the times where abuse is going on, right? Either of the mother in the house or the kid, the kids getting abused. Parents could be on drugs. The frustration of wanting to have certain things and your family not being financially able to get these things, that can make you mad. But the coldest thing, even without all of those causes and effects, a lot of Black and Hispanic, especially boys, we're just mad. We can't even explain why we're mad. We're just mad. And the reason why we're mad is because of the world that we live in. It's a direct result of what the previous generation went through, and the previous generation went through, and the previous generation went through. Of course, we know that there's something called reincarnation or regeneration, a biblical concept. We know every couple generations we're coming back. So we know this is not our first rodeo. It's not the first life we've lived, right? It's not just like the goddamn soap opera, One Life to Live. We know this ain't the first time we lived. So in understanding that, even if somebody doesn't believe or bear witness to that, you don't have to believe what the hell you want to believe. Even if you don't believe in that conceptually, and the coldest thing is, even before I understood it biblically, this is something that my family always believed and always told me, right? For example, there was a time, a standing theory that my little brother was actually the reincarnation of my grandpa, the one that stabbed the white boy we just read about him. But since then, since my oldest son was born, my father has withdrawn that theory and now said that my oldest son is actually, he believes that my oldest son is his pop coming back, which may be true. But this is conceptually what my family believed in anyway and taught me anyway. So I always understood this to some degree or another. I understood it even better once I go into the scriptures and I can see it, and I can see who the world called Christ Yahushua, talking about it, etc., etc. So we understand that. But even if somebody doesn't believe it, which they don't have to believe it, scientifically, post-traumatic stress is passed from fathers to their offspring. This has been scientifically proven by both the University of North Carolina and Oxford. You gonna argue with Oxford? They publish your dictionary, don't they? How you gonna argue with Oxford? So these actual studies have been done at, a university level, both in America and abroad, to substantiate that post-traumatic stress is passed from fathers specifically to their offspring. So the trauma that our people have endured the last half a millennia here in the hills of North, Central, and South America we are born with it. We're born feeling it, right? So a lot of us are just angry and mad just because, but it's because we're actually carrying that with us, right? And these types of things, they get ignored, but it's the very, serious and grave reality of the situation is we are carrying that with us. And that just makes us angry in general, even if there's not some abuse going on at home, or everything at home is generally cool, and things of that nature. You still gonna carry that anger up in you. And with the tribe of Levi, of course, like it says, cursed beyond anger because it was cruel, and our wrath because it was fierce. So that means that we're carrying even more anger and a cruel and fierce anger with us that we, of course, have to watch and be on top of, because if it's cursed, then that means it could lead us the wrong way sometimes. So it's something that we always have to be on top of. You know what I'm saying? But it's just crazy, and it's it's just so deep, and the rabbit hole is so deep. So I challenge everybody to do their best in digging and diving into their lineage, into their family, into their history, into their ancestry, their genealogy. I basically, when I lived in Dallas, picked up, being a genealogist, became a genealogist. First, of course, started with myself. I looked at, many brothers in the camp, did research on their family, and, of course, Officer Assad being one of the main people whose family I looked up. And some people, unfortunately, some brothers, they may not know their pops. Some brothers may have the disposition of their pops might not know their pops, because sometimes the unfortunate things happens of a dead end, and that happens sometimes. When you do your genealogy, you may run into a dead end, and it's unfortunate. And of course, you can't take, and you got to have sense when you do this research as well. You got to be spiritual when you do this research as well. But it doesn't even cost a lot. It doesn't cost a lot to even do. Like, you can sign up. Let's say you sign up for Ancestry.com. You can sign up for Ancestry.com for like $20, right? It's $20 a month. But if you're just gonna look up it shouldn't take multiple months. If you set a night or a day or whatever time you have aside for it, shouldn't take you multiple months really to find out and what you want to do. In some international countries, the records are there and you can look at, but if you're dealing with Ancestry.com, you really gonna only really be able to extensively look at the United States of America. That's where you're gonna be able to extensively look at the U.S. What you're going to look at is you're going to look at the census. The United States Census is going to be the most effective way for you to track your people down, who they are, what their name is, stuff like that. And dealing with genealogy, different things happen, right? So, for example, if you look at if I pull up my family census record, right, 1870. Because the census, of course, is every 10 years. 1870, 1880, 1890, 1900. A couple of those censuses, they will have our last name spelled weird or wrong, right? Why? You know what I'm saying? Why would they have our last name spelled wrong? Is this really how we spell our name? No, right? So just understanding when you're dealing with looking at these census, if you take a look at that census paper, right, that has all these names on it, basically everybody that lived on whatever page, they had this page, and whoever lived in that area is on this page. This is in the late 1800s. Everything is handwritten. And these things are being handwritten. If you look on the page, it's all in the same handwriting. What does that mean? Whoever the Census Bureau agent is that came there wrote all of this down, right? So they can easily fuck your family's last name up. And then the next 10 years later, the person comes and doesn't fuck your family's name up, right? These things happen. So people got to understand, and this is very common when you're dealing with ancestry and genealogical studies. So Ancestry even understands this, and that's why Ancestry.com is a good resource for America. it's a good resource for America because they understand this so good to where if they have it logged wrong, they already do the correcting for you. Like any census or any documentation that has my family's last name in it spelt wrong, they already corrected. So you can go and look and see that they messed it up, but Ancestry already understands that no, this is what it really is. Somebody wrote this wrong, or they misinterpreted, because mind you, it's 1800s. Everything's in cursive too. So the way cursive can be funny. You can misunderstand certain letters in cursive. But with the consistency of all the names connected and the addresses, we know this is the same people, but they fucked their name up on one of the census or whatever. So these things happen. You got to be mindful of when you're dealing with the census and research and genealogy. But just in my genealogical research, the United States Census is the most important, document that comes out every 10 years that's going to help you track your family down and get these names. And once you get these names, then you can do further research. So what I happened upon, which led me to find the newspaper articles, was just a website simply called newspaper.com. And newspaper.com has literally full newspapers logged from all over the world. So like, not all over the world, all over the country. And Canada too, my fault, because I like Canadian paper as well. From all over the place. All these newspapers. So then you can then take, because when you deal with like the type of shit that was newsworthy in the late 1800s and early 1900s, you wouldn't even believe, right? So like, I read about 2 knife attacks in my family. So that wasn't the only thing in those papers. Everything that everybody was getting charged for in them towns, right? Everything. Guess what was going in the paper? If anybody got arrested, that went in the paper. You see what I'm saying? If somebody bought a piece of land, that went in the paper. See what I'm saying? So if you could track these names down and they're from these small towns, and these small towns have a newspaper publication, you can find out some interesting things about your family. You know what I'm saying? And get to know and understand a little bit more about who you are and where you come from. But like I said, that census is gonna be important. And then what happens is, once we go past 1870 now, right? Because 1870 is the first census after the abolition of slavery, after the Emancipation Proclamation, after the 13th Amendment. That's the first one. So once you go past 1870, most of my brothers from the tribe of Judah who were still in slavery in America in 1860, 1850, 1840, what you'll get in 1860 and 1850 is something called the slave schedules. So slave schedules were essentially like a census for the slaves. But I believe that the first time it was mandated was 1850, then they come back again 1860, then that's over. So if your family was in slavery in 1850 and 1860, there's going to be little to no record of your family at all past 1850. You're really not going to be able to track it past there. But you can track it to there. Certain brothers I've been able to track to there. Was interesting as well. A brother whose family I tracked to 1850 was a brother by the name of Officer Yaash in the camp, right? Officer Yaash. And, his family is the Carter family, which is actually how they anglicized the French word quartier, right? So his family were actually the same crop of slaves from Haiti, but the French took them and had them in slavery actually in Mississippi. So crazy thing is, as I'm doing my research further on my family, I see certain of my family that went off into Mississippi intermarried with Yaash's family in Mississippi. You see what I'm saying? Blew my mind. Stumbled across that as well, just this last weekend in doing the research. And then also a couple months back, man, I because I took a look at you know, I already had this a couple years ago, but just the lineage from the first one recorded, born in America, 1832, Francois Claude, all the way to me. Crazy thing is this, right? What I did was I looked up the etymology on every name, right, from Francois to me, right? So what's crazy is this, watch. Francois means free man, right? That's what I mean, free man. Albert means noble birth, which is his son that then had Kennedy, which is my great-great-grandfather, which means helmeted chief, right? Then we have my grandfather Preston, which means priest village, or like the place the priest dwell. Then we have my pops Donald, which means world ruler. Then we have me, of course the name my father gave me is Adonis, which means Lord. So if we take a look at all these names, a free man of noble birth, then we got a chief, a priest, a world ruler, a lord. So what's crazy is all of these names kind of indicate, you know, rulership, lordship, you know, leadership, etc. So that's another thing that I kind of found interesting. Like, not only do I come from a long lineage of, you know, people who were, you know, resisting quote unquote establishment, oppression, etc. Of course, we also got this commonality of names that indicate a leadership role, right? Which is, you know, crazy as well. And then of course we got warrior, you know, just a warrior nature coming out of the revolution. And then my grandfather and his father, both my great-great-grandfather, World War I veteran, grandfather, World War II veteran, etc. So we just, you know, just understanding this ilk, you know, and that spirit, and, you know, that lineage. And it's so crazy how anybody can ever try to fault the validity of lineage and then what lineage plays in, you know, passing down the behavior to a people, because that's what also has been studies that have been conducted and discovered that, you know, you inherit your behavioral traits from your father, how you behave, what you do, your nature, who you are. That's inherent from your father, right? From your father's lineage. So to see, okay, to know I come from this lineage of individuals who do all these various things, it's really no wonder why I'm here now. But ultimately it's all, of course, by the Spirit of the Most High, by election, right? And hence the shirt, hence the album, right? Election. He elects, he chooses, and pre-does this. So this does not just happen as if it was by a man's idea or by happenstance or simply chance. The Most High has very brilliantly, ingeniously designed all this from the beginning of time, and it's marvelous. It's marvelous in our eyes, man. You know, but with that, we're gonna close this one out. We're gonna again give all praises to Yahweh Shem Yahushua and say shalom.